Hello everyone, welcome back to the second part of module number 11, negative messages. Now in this module, part of the module, we cover 5 learning objectives. First, we cover on subject lines, how subject lines are considered when it comes to negative messages or bad news. Normally in letters, we don't use subject lines that often. However, we'll cover a little bit of that depending on the situation. Then we'll apply strategies. It basically means that how we plan, how we organize our messages, negative or bad news in a Word document. So that strategies means the plan. We'll talk about a little bit about legal implications. If the language of your letters or words that you choose in your letter are not good for a negative news, then there are legal implications. There are legal cases against such people. So I will talk about that also. Then in the end, it's kind of, we'll use buffer, how we use buffers. I will talk about that. There are different types of buffers also that we use. Buffer basically means when we try to have a good image in the beginning before we giving out the negative news. And in the end, lastly, I'll give you a sample example. Let's start. So negative messages, just a recap, what we call negative or bad news. It's basically when we have a letter of rejection, a refusal, there's a company organization policy that will affect the employees so much and the customers also. Maybe there are some insulting or intrusive requests coming from customers, or within the organization, it's like a performance appraisal which have an outcome of a bad news for the employee. So that's like, and lastly, product recalls. So lots of organizations out there, they have recalls. Like if there is a bad product, they have to recall it. And so it's bad news coming out in the press for them. So how they deal with that. So let's start with the purpose of negative message. There's the two of them, primary purpose and secondary purpose. Now by primary goals, we mean that we want to share something bad, something nasty, something which other people will not accept as pleasant, but we have to give them. So this is a primary purpose for such messages. So we have to, and they have to accept the bad news. That is, unfortunately, I'm afraid to say that. On this sideways, we also want to maintain a positive image of personally and for the organization. So they are both part of primary purpose. First is giving out the information, and second, keeping a good image at the same time. So we have to be planning accordingly. Now, secondary purpose is basically we want to build a relationship with our customers, even with if we're sharing something with the employees or some other people. So we want to keep the relationship going on. So if there is a bad feeling about the negative news on the receiver end or the reader end, we want to reduce that. How we reduce that? We want to make it fair. And I'll discuss that, how we do that. There are structures, organizational structures that we use. And we try to avoid all kinds of legal liabilities in this case. Okay, so we'll talk about that also. Now, what's the rule for subject line? So we have like 2 categories here. One is when we are writing to superiors, and the B over here is when we are writing to our peers, our colleagues, and subordinates, people who are working under us. So as an example, I've given here as an example of subject just below the pictures is like subject, improving our subscription letter. Now, if you're talking to a superior here, we're giving them a solution rather than complaining about something. Improvement of our subscription letter means that maybe the story is that our subscription has gone down, so we're thinking of improving it to improve that lots of people get subscription again. On the other side, when we talked about the B part, then we talk about on the subject line, we can actually go directly with the topic of our the point. Like subject over here, I gave like status on new hires for summers. So it's like a new status. So maybe coming summers, we're not getting more applications. So status, factual data immediately on the subject topic. So this is like a typical rule for subject lines. Normally in letters, we don't use subject lines at all, but when we are using it, making sure that when we're talking to superiors in the subject, we're talking about solutions. And when we're talking about with peers and subordinates, we're talking about directly on the topic. How should I organize negative messages? So now we're starting to plan. We're starting into the strategy part. Now, whenever we talk about strategy, it's a step-by-step process. So organization has to be there. Systematic approach has to be there. So give the reason. So the plan is give the reason for the refusal before the refusal itself, when readers will understand and accept the reason. All right. So we need to come up with a story here first. Okay, because of this, this is happening. Because of, so we have to tell them the why. If you remember from the last part, the why, you have to give them the why and then give the core of it. Okay, this is what happened. And other side, some people, it's like, this is now the first one is like, when we give the why, it's like indirect approach, and the direct approach is give the negative just once clearly. Okay, so now we have to come up with organization here depending on our reader. Who is our reader, right? We have to understand that category. How we organize a negative letter, just to keep in that there's a letter here. It's a letter. Give the reason first, then the refusal. Give them choices. Alternative means choices. If they have any, we can provide them any choice that can have a better effect on this news. Give that, and then in the end, goodwill ending. So we want to have a good feelings in the end. We don't want to actually make them go away with anger. An example for reason and refusal. So, okay, so I've given a couple of examples here. Let me just go through them very quickly. Now, the first reason over here is not that good. So I added like which could be better, how it could be better. So reason that hurts company. Our company is not hiring at the present time because profits are down. In fact, the downturn has prompted top management to reduce the salaried staff by 5% just this month, which perhaps more reductions to come. So this is like, firstly, it's like too much information is given, like personal information is being given to a stranger who want to apply for a job. That's, I think so, it's not good, it's not professional, it's not formal. Now, which is better? Our company does not have any openings now. So it's straightforward, it's clear, but even this could have been much, much better. All right. Now, direct refusal implied. So what, you cannot get insurance for just 1 month. It's a direct refusal. It's another example there. Or implied refusal, how you can perceive it better. The shortest term for insurance policy is 6 months. So indirectly you're telling them, all right, you cannot get 1 month, but yeah, our policy is, factual data is that we give policies when you sign up for 6 months insurance. It's a continuation of the plan here. However, now from a letter to a message. Now, when you're talking about a message, now this message could go anywhere when we're using any social media app, also like Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, or any other. So how we do that? So de-emphasize the refusal by putting it in the same para as the reason rather than in a different paragraph. Okay, so try to give reason with the negative news together, okay, rather than separating them. It will help, it eases. Now when we talk about alternatives here, so like choices that we can give with the negative news, okay, we have given that, and now how we actually creating that buffer thing. We'll cover the buffer part in more detail, but like it's alternatives, there are choices that we can give them. Offer the reader another way to get what's wanted. Yeah, so what they can want. So just the right, for example, now if a person is being laid off, if a person has been fired, but at the same time, the way you can actually fire him, saying that this could be an opportunity for you that you are actually wondering, that this organization did not give you, maybe now the opportunity that you can go out and do something that you wanted to do for a very long time. So this could be an alternative. Just take it as a positive here. So just the writer really cares about the reader. So you have to show that The writer is caring about the reader when we talked about when we write composing. Enable the reader to re-establish psychological freedom. All right, so don't be giving them like something that they are afraid of. They get fear in there. Okay, so we have to be empathizing with them. Okay, psychologically empathize with them. Allow you to end on a positive note. We always say that we want to have connections, we need to have these networks, we have to keep that intact. Okay, now whether we are using any forms of whether it's email or a memo, letter, reports, presentation, conversation, we have to follow all these things, all right, to keep that way going on. Now, legal implication. When we talk about legal implications, so whenever we are talking, we have to keep in mind that the language that we use could go against us, especially when it's written down. It's not oral, but it's written down thing. So any message that is recorded, okay, can go against us. Okay, negative internet posts have met with legal challenges. Right? Think about how a reasonable person might interpret your words. So we have, whatever is the case, make sure that the language that we use. Now, when we talk about language, it could be abusive language that people can talk about during conversation or during a letter. There are lots of cases against, we call defamation cases. Okay, that language, the people have used language that harms other person. All right, other person credibility, other person's reputation. So defamation cases were there. They were libel cases. We call, now defamation cases are divided into two things: libel and slander. Now, libel means something written defamation, like some people can defame any other person on a newspaper. You've written something on them on a newspaper, and something is spoken on an interview that I don't like this person because he has done this in the past. Maybe that person has not done it, or you don't know the context when, if so. We have to be clear on that. Or sometimes abusive language is there, but sometimes we might use careless language also. Statements that are potentially damage or that could be misinterpreted by lots of people. For example, careless language could be that, all right, let's say they assume that someone wants to visit your a factory just to see how good your satisfy your workers are, and you tell them that on particular day you can't visit the factory because it's too hazardous for tour trips. All right, so tour groups, you can't go there. So this indirectly says that the people working over there are in deplorable situations, conditions. Our environment is not good. So yeah, so we have to be very careful. It's like one is abusive language here, another is careless language here. So legal implications are there. Now, giving bad news to superiors, as like we did it earlier also when we're talking about subject lines. So how, when you're giving bad news to superiors, our bosses, describe the problem, tell how it happened, describe the options for fixing it, recommend solution, and ask for action. So always do that. It's like a basic thing that when you're going to a superior, it's like coming from me, it's like I never tell them that I actually don't tell them the complaints. All right, if you have a complaint, good. Many people have complaints on many things. However, it's always nice, it's always good to keep the relationship going, that you give the solution also, give the alternatives also, give some choices also, so they can in a position to make a sound decision for that thing that you're talking about. So for superiors, solution is better. Describe them, okay, clearly, clarify the situations to them. Now, when you're talking to your peers or subordinates, it's obvious thing that, yeah, you can go directly to them. You can talk to them directly, clearly. Just like doctors. In the last lecture, we talked about doctors. You can actually talk to them like doctors here. Clearly state what is wrong, what has happened, and why you're doing this, or why the policy of the company has changed. So describe the problem, present an alternative or compromise if one is available. Compromise means that if choices are there, there is an alternative route that they can do. Yeah, tell them. If possible, ask for inputs or actions. Especially when you're talking to your peers, like your colleagues, you can ask them, okay, there is a problem. because of this problem, this is happening, this could be happening. If you have any solutions, to share the solutions and that we can apply. We can actually assist many people in that fashion. So yeah, we do that in our writing also. Influences on readers' reactions. So always thinking that how whatever we are writing, how it will affect others. So we have to be in their shoes, thinking about emotionally what they will go through after reading this. We all know about what uh, negative things are, but so we have to make sure that whatever statements, it's a dangerous statement that we're going through. All right. So do you and the readers have a good relationship? Think about that. Do you want to keep that relationship going, or is it just it's a one way, it's a one-time thing? Does the organization treat people well? Because if we're talking about employees here, okay, so it's a credibility of the organization also at the same time. So if you're talking to an employee here, and you're telling him maybe his performance has not been up to the mark, they have missed some targets, or when we compare to actual targets and the targets that you wanted to do. So you have to be careful here, okay? So we treat people nicely, and we treat people humbly. You want to have your brand really good on that issue. Have readers been warned or possibly negatives? Okay, so did you warn them that this could happen, this is coming? Okay, so there's like reasons given to them. Okay, so they're not surprised, immediately shocked that this has happened. Like we've been shocked by coronavirus lately. That's how it has become a pandemic. Now it is a pandemic. It's going around 180 countries. It's going there. But earlier, if we talked about in December or January, we were not shocked. It was happening in China, Wuhan, China. But now it's been a shock. But and lots of countries were not ready for that. And yeah, I wish everyone good health, but the situation is getting bad and bad, unfortunately. Allah help everyone. Influence on readers' reactions. So against the continuation, have readers bought into the criteria for the decision? So do you think that with your reasons they will buy the reason, they will accept the reason? Do you think that? Do communications after the negative build goodwill? Okay, so it's like it's always that you have to communicate with them even after giving them this news. All right, so do communications after the negative build goodwill? Yeah, we do want to do that for our goodwill. We want to keep them in our circle. When should I consider using a buffer? So now we are going into the fourth of our learning objectives here. So we talk about buffer. Now, if you remember, buffer basically means that you start with a message that is positive statement about someone, and then you go in the second, let's say first paragraph is a neutral or a positive opening that does not reveal the bad news. Okay, so that's like a buffer thing, opening buffer. Then and then the part one, let's say body part one, we give the reason. All right, so we give the reason that this is happening, an explanation of the causes or the reasons for the bad news. Then we actually hit with the bad news, and then we close it with the final thoughts that can create a goodwill, or that can we have an action going on. So buffer is like a neutral or positive statement that we do at the start of the letter, or let's say now there are different types of buffers here. Okay, so and depends on different situations at the same time. Start with any good news or positive elements the letter contains. State the fact or provide a chronological of events that lead up to doing this. For example, in the kingdom right now, we have a curfew of 24 hours because of coronavirus. As of today, it's like 8th of April of 2020. So basically, this happened because of state of events that cases has been increased of coronavirus, and when the cases are increased, they're more cautious about it. They want to stop or contain the spread, contain it completely. So that's why there has been a curfew with limitations, with conditions. So yeah, because of the chronological events. Now we have factual data, which is always good because of the data we can making a sound decisions. Refer to enclosures in the letter, so you can refer to something that has happened backwards and now you're doing that because of those things. Thank the reader for something he or she has done in the past. So type again, that's the buffer thing, that you tell them that you have been doing great in the past, you have done excellent in the past, and you can do it again. Maybe they're going through some situation personally, but you buck them up, you actually give them encouragement, you give them motivation in that sense. And state a general principle. Now, state general principle means a policy. Give them a policy. That's a company policy, unfortunately, or the company policy has been changed due to the merger or with another organization. So that could be a reason. So explain them nicely, politely, that according to the so these are buffers that one can use. Not all of the buffers can be used in one letter or statement, but you can choose what is suitable. Now, thank you very much for listening. Now I'll go directly to an example before we end. All right, let me just go to I'll share another document that I've opened to show you about an example. It's going to happen now. Let's see. Okay, it's opening. I hope it opens nicely. All right, it's opening the word. Yeah. Now, I selected an example over here. It's about rejection of a grant application. Okay. All right, something is going on. So let me just pause. All right, so we have a sample here, rejection of a grant application. So what I've done here is basically, this is the letter. All right, so we start by saying that on behalf of the members of the Research and Scholarship Committee, thank you for submitting an application for this year's Research and Scholarship Grant Competition. So what is this? This is called buffer. All right, so it's a positive start. So that's like a first paragraph. Now in the second paragraph, so what we've done is it's a refusal. We're talking about the refusal here. All right, so I'm sorry to report that your grant proposal was among those that were not approved for funding in the spring. Right? But okay, so that's a refusal. So are we giving any reasons? Yes, we are. So with the reduction of grant funds caused by budget cuts and the record number of applications, I'm afraid that many worthwhile proposals could not be supported. So this is the reason basically that they're given. And what happens in the end? Although you did not receive a grant this year, I trust that you will continue to pursue both internal and external funding opportunities. All right, so this is like a goodwill towards the other person, that is still motivating, encouraging them, keep on applying for other grants available. All right, so this is an example over here. So what I've done here, I'll upload this separately on this document. So in the introductory paragraph, what we did, the introductory paragraph in the bad news message should accompany the following. That we try to do that in that example. Provide a buffer to cushion the bad news that will follow. Let the receiver know what the message is about without stating the obvious. Serve as a transition into the discussion of reasons without revealing the bad news or leading the receiver to expect good news. So yeah, we did not actually mention that the good news is coming in the next line or so. We were not doing that. If these objectives can be accomplished in one sentence, that sentence could be the first paragraph. Now in the body, what we want in the body, to deliver the message, the bad news in the body of the message, stated clearly and concisely, and explain the reason briefly and unemotionally. Avoid apologies, they weaken your explanation of position. Try to embed the bad news in a supporting or not topical sentence or paragraph. Furthermore, try to embed it in a subordinate clause of a sentence. The purpose is not to conceal bad news, but to soften it impact. So you give a reason, basically, in short, it says that to give a reason when you're apologizing. And in the closing of a message containing negative news should be courteous and helpful. You're giving a help here. You basically, you're making sure that you feel for them, right? It's not that you're just giving the goodbye or closed door to them, but no, you show that you feel for them. The purpose of the closing is to maintain or rebuild goodwill. The closing should have a sincere tone. Avoid overused closing, such as, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call. This is bad. Not to use this. Offer the receiver another option. Presenting another option shifts the emphasis from the negative news to a positive solution, by Thomas Alpin's Business Communication. All right. So this was an example that I wanted to actually share with you, and I hope that you learned today something really great. This was the part 2 of chapter number 11, negative messages. So thank you very much. As I said before, if you have any questions, you can send me an email on my email address or contact me through Blackboard. Wish you a good day, and stay home, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum.